Hi, welcome to this lesson on potential energy diagrams. The question of the day, how does a catalyst affect a chemical reaction? Potential energy in chemistry is still stored energy, but it's stored in chemical bonds. So when it comes to the ability of a substance to react, we are going to refer to potential energy. Some compounds have a lot of potential energy and others have less. It really just depends on how atoms are bonded together. We also spoke about potential energy back when we were doing heating and cooling curves, and that is also kind of potential energy. When it comes to chemistry, the potential energy is kind of a combination of the energy within the bonds, but also the energy within an intermolecular force that holds particles together. Baseline is that it's going to come down to how the molecule itself is built. A potential energy diagram is going to track energy exchanges during chemical reactions as we move from reactants, go through the reaction, and end as products. In kinetics, we have the term enthalpy, which is also called heat of reaction, represented by a delta H, and that is the total energy usage of a chemical reaction. So it's going to be the potential energy of the reactants that we start with and the energy of the products that we end with. We're going to subtract those two values, and that'll tell us the full energy exchange of the chemical reaction. An exothermic chemical reaction is going to have heat exiting the system, and therefore that delta H value is going to be negative. Endothermic chemical reactions are going to have heat entering the system, or energy entering the system, so for that reason, it'll have a positive delta H value. Activation energy is the energy required for a chemical reaction to begin or activate. And I like to relate that to a box of matches. The striker strip, obviously, is going to light a match, and that is the amount of energy required to kind of get your reaction to start. But I also like to refer to this with catalysts. It is possible to light a match without the striker strip. If you have a rough enough surface, you can just scrape the match along that surface and it'll ignite. So when I had a chalkboard in my classroom, I would do the match on the chalkboard and it would work, but you'd have to drag the match pretty far, like a few feet, in order to get the match to light. But with the case of the striker on the matchbox, it has a texture to it, which kind of expedites the process. You only have to carry the match an inch, maybe two, to light it. So that kind of acts like a catalyst, but regardless, the scraping and the effort that you put into the scraping of the match is the activation energy. I like to say that nature is lazy and messy. So kind of what happens is that exothermic reactions that get rid of energy are more favored by nature because nature is lazy. She wants to get rid of a bunch of energy. But she's also messy. So when it comes to entropy, which we'll talk about a little later, and how disorganized this reaction is, she kind of likes a little bit of chaos. So it's kind of, a lot of people will relate it to a messy bedroom. You can have a messy bedroom, and that is because you are a part of nature. You're lazy, you don't want to clean it, and you're messy. That's why it becomes this way. There's a cat sleeping in the closet here. That is because whoever owns this bedroom is a part of nature and is lazy and messy. And chemical reactions are kind of the same way. Whatever is going to bring the result of a lot of chaos and a very low energy system, that is going to be the favored reaction, or the ones that happen most easily. Like I was saying with the match strikers, adding a catalyst is going to reduce the activation energy needed for the reaction to happen. And we can also depict that on our graph. I'll show you in a minute. Also, we can read equilibrium reactions forward and backwards. And again, we'll talk about equilibrium going forward. It just means that this reaction is not like a straight shot. You can have the forward reaction, which you read from left to right. And that's typically how you would see a chemical reaction up until this point. But there are some reactions that will actually go backwards as well, and those are going to be indicated by the double-sided arrow. So truthfully, throughout this course, I have been showing you the Haber process, which is this reaction, only pointed in one direction, where the nitrogen and the hydrogen become ammonia. But for real, the ammonia will also break apart into hydrogen and nitrogen based on some conditions. And that is called equilibrium, which again, we'll talk about a little bit later. But what this double-sided arrow means is that the reaction goes both forward and backwards. So when we talk about this, we would say that the forward reaction is read from left to right, the same way you're used to reading reactions. And then the reverse reaction is read from right to left, like reading backwards. Now we're ready to get into the specifics of potential energy diagrams. And right here we have an exothermic reaction, meaning that heat is exiting. There's a few ways that we can know that this is an exothermic reaction, but the first reason is that the products have less energy than the reactants, meaning that over the course of this reaction on the graph, we are going to be losing energy, which is on the y-axis here. Across the bottom, it sometimes says reaction coordinate. Other times it'll just say time. It kind of depends on who wrote the graph. Either way, it's fine. But the exothermic is represented by the loss in energy over the course of the reaction. Because this is an exothermic reaction, that delta H value, which is the difference between the products and the reactants, is going to have a negative value. We calculate it by doing the products minus the reactants, or the final minus the initial. The star on this potential energy diagram is where the reaction is actually taking place, and that is the point where reactants are converting into products. It is a very high energy state. We call it the activated complex, but the amount of energy needed to get us from the reactants to the reaction actually happening is called the activation energy. Again, that activated complex is the apex of the reaction. That's where we're going to have the highest energy state. And for the tiniest split second, our substance is going to be both reactant and product at the same time, which is why it's crazy high energy. So it's clear that you need a little bit of energy, the activation energy, to get your reactants to actually react. And then the activated complex is where the reaction is taking place. Once you pass that activated complex, we are going to lose a lot of energy. And this is the part where I say nature is lazy. You give her this tiny amount of activation energy. That's fantastic. The goal is that you want your products to have less energy overall than your reactants. So if we look at this really tall arrow right here, this represents the potential energy the reactants have before they start reacting. They get a little bit more added to them in order to hit that activated complex. And then down here on this ledge, we have the products, which have a lot less energy than the reactants did. And the net loss of energy in this case is represented by delta H, which is the difference between the products and the reactants. The endothermic diagram is a little bit different, but largely the same. You're going to measure energy on the y-axis and the reaction coordinate or time on the x-axis. You have your reactants here on this first ledge, and they do not have a lot of potential energy. Your products over here have a lot more energy than the reactants, so that's how we would identify that this is an endothermic reaction. To get from reactants to products, there has to be an absorption of energy, or rather, energy must enter the system. Because energy must enter the system, we have a positive value for delta H. Remember, the difference between the products and the reactants. The activation energy on an endothermic reaction is much more than it is on the exothermic. And that is because we gotta get these reactants to have a lot of energy to hit that activated complex, which again is the apex of the reaction. In this case, the activation energy is probably something like fire or a spark, something with a lot of heat energy. Because this activation energy is so tall, so much, this reaction is not really favored by nature. It's not just because we need a lot of energy to get it started, but also because the products have more energy than the reactants. And remember, nature is lazy and messy. Nature does not want to have a result that is more energetic than where it started. The whole idea is to have less energy. So this is not a favorable reaction. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. Usually it means that you really have to have a good amount of activation energy to get it started. So this would be something like the oxidation of gold. Gold is a very, very, very stable metal, doesn't like to oxidize very much. So you would need like a heck of a lot of energy in order to get gold to oxidize. On the other hand, getting iron to oxidize would not take a lot of energy. That's just rust. It does happen, and it happens quite easily. I mean, not that easily, but it happens, right? And it happens far faster than gold's oxidation. So that activation energy is reflected here. Endothermic reactions typically have very large activation energies because nature doesn't really want to do them. Here are some answers to questions. Typically, I would ask these of like regular students, but you are free to cover up the answers across the left side of the screen and answer this yourself. Really, I just wanted to show you this dotted line here. This dotted line here represents the catalyzed reaction, meaning that this is the path that the reaction would take if a catalyst were added to the reaction. So this is, you can tell that the star or the apex, the activated complex, would not be at this dashed line across the top, but instead this dotted line right here at the top of this arrow labeled E. This is going to require less activation energy to get to that activated complex in the case of adding a catalyst. So that is all I have for you for today on potential energy diagrams. If you need some vocab help, I would go back to the lesson on collision theory. Please subscribe so you don't miss the next lesson. Leave any questions you have in the comment section below the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.